Hey everyone, this is the LEGO Star Wars Ultimate Collector Series Republic Gunship. I bought this thing at full retail price, built it on YouTube and Twitch. Now I'm here to give you my thoughts about this big old thing. First of all, I think it's important to establish the scale here realistically without any lens distortion. This is a little bit wider than the Ultimate Collector Series Star Destroyer. Compared to the UCS Millennium Falcon, this is also wider. It's about twice as tall when on its short stand, and the length of the gunship is just a little bit less than that of the Falcon. Needless to say, this is not minifig scaled in any way, shape, or form. It is barely minifig compatible in just a very limited number of ways. You can see the included minifigures on the stand down below, and I will show you those later on, just up close by themselves. The stand is the only build involved with this other than the main craft itself, and I'm fine with that. Also, just to throw this out there real quick, any comparisons to like old Lego Technic minifigure, or Technic figures I should say, or the Jack Stone figures or anything, those kind of don't make sense to me because they never made Star Wars figures in any size other than mini or the large action figure ones with the Hero Factory style ball joints and armor pieces and all that. But in spite of the fact that this is crazy large in scale, I actually like it quite a bit. I like how it went together. I liked the build. It was enjoyable. It was paced well. It was not frustrating, with just a few small exceptions near the end that really weren't a problem. It just took me a little bit longer than expected to get a few things lined up. Also, given the size of this, it's very carryable, it's very handleable, and it's very durable. It's also very lightweight for its size, surprisingly so. I have no concern about just reaching in there and grabbing it and just tossing it around. You can practically swoosh this thing, I would say. It's recommended. It's rather tail heavy, so it is recommended to hold it from the underside and the back as well. But I mean, this thing is ready to pick up and move about. Just good luck finding a good place to display it though. Getting up closer, I'm very happy with how the nose comes together. It has studs on opposite sides construction, so right down the center for the gray strip there, which is appropriate. You can see that anti-studs are meeting from basically bottom to bottom of pieces, and those are parts of subassemblies that are connected better farther inboard. But all these different directions of building, including at angles here and different subassemblies, ultimately are attached together in very satisfying ways. And I think the angles are pretty good. I think the proportions are pretty good. There are some unsightly gaps as you go through the build process, but most of those get filled up. I mean, you look up really close and yeah, there are some little gaps and things, but I'm really looking very close, and compared to the scale of the entire model, I'm happy with the level of finish for most of this. I will point out things that I'm not so happy with, such as, for example, these canopy pieces, which are not opaque. That dark red is supposed to be not see-through. It is very see-through, and you can see there's even poor consistency just in how it's produced. So given the fact that you can see light through there, it becomes very apparent that this isn't the quality that we're looking for. Also, I got a little gap in the black stripe there, and both of my canopies have some scuffs on them. They were partly separately bagged with not just all the other pieces together, but there were enough pieces, sorry about the focus there were enough pieces together in the bag to put in some pretty major scuffs. Like that one right there is not something that I want to see on an Ultimate Collector Series set, but then again, I don't want to see through this at all in the first place. Speaking of which, nor do I ever want to see a difference between two opaque regular dark red pieces next to each other like we always do. This is an ongoing problem for LEGO. Each cockpit is a little bit simplistic, but uses a window frame around the outside, and then there's a brick-built seat and a fairly generic console piece in the front that is printed. Contrary to what I've heard, you can put minifigures into each of these just fine, and they will sit there. They're just not attached with any stud, and then you can put the canopy piece down. Just got to leave enough space behind there. So it's not minifig scaled, but technically these canopies or these cockpits are minifig compatible. There are a fair number of stickers used throughout this build, including this. I will point out anything that is a print. So everything else that is a decoration that I don't call out as a print is using a sticker, and the entire sticker sheet uses clear backed stickers. So if you get any dust underneath whatsoever, rip to you. I do apologize for the pain that you'll go through. And some of them are pretty big like this. No, I think the other side got just a little bit of dust underneath it. Unfortunately, that is never a fun thing. The shaping here is very good. I liked that. I liked putting that together. There's a little bit of detail just inside that door there. But the most satisfying thing of this entire build for me is that line right there. Because this entire upper section is its own large assembly, which is several sub-assemblies connected together, and it just follows this perfect angle all the way up. It's very, very smooth, just truly, truly satisfying. I'm going to overuse that word a little bit for a while here, evidently, but it feels really good, and it goes together nicely and feels premium in terms of design. These bubble turrets do have printed canopies, thank goodness. You get the same piece top and bottom for the side ones, and then there's a different print for the wing turrets. There's a little bit of built-up detail for the seat inside and the controls. That is not particularly minifig compatible, but with a little bit of customization, I think you can get, just rotating the handles inside there, I think you can get a minifigure to kind of stay there. Again, it's going to be totally out of scale. You can adjust the angle of the emitter just a little bit to the left and to the right, and also these can turn towards the rear. It's a little bit ovoid in shape because this is a perfect hemisphere here. There's a perfect hemisphere on the underside, and then there's this strip in order to have the white line going through and the emitter connected with, proper physical building techniques and all the stuff inside. But I think that's acceptable. I don't think I know how they could have done that particularly better. You can get these folded in, but it doesn't fold up the way that I would really want. The mechanism for making all this work is different on the real thing, and so you have just a limitation. You can face it forward, not all the way forward, and you can swing it back, and then you have a little bit of range of motion here when it's open, and that's just the limit of that. Speaking of open, the cargo deck is mostly open and tiled. Most of the dark red space in here is tiled, but there are some studs around the edges and right down the center of it as well. There's a 2-stud wide strip of studs. So if you want to put a bunch of minifigures in this, even though it's not minifig scaled at all, you can put some around the edges and down the center, and that's it. But the main center section of here, where I think is best for the figures, just won't hold them by their feet. They'll just slide around and fall over. This here is not canonically correct. There is supposed to be a little bit of a console there, but it's not supposed to go all the way up to the top. But that was absolutely critical for structure here. I personally have no issue with that. It's not particularly unsightly. We would prefer to not see that for the sake of accuracy, but there needs to be something here to hold up the whole rest of the structure, because the wings are the heaviest things on this. So that is more than acceptable if you ask me. And there's also an openable ramp at the rear. Here's a look from a slightly lower angle, just so you can see a little bit of extra detail towards the front and along the top. And there's the rear ramp from the rear, which attaches with just a couple studs at the top to kind of tack it in place when it's held in its closed position. Speaking of closing, canonically, these doors are not supposed to close up all the way. They're not supposed to cover the entire troop or cargo bay, because this was the Attack of the Clones version of the assault gunship, and thus you have just partial coverage. These doors are able to slide back and forward part way. Again, that is canonically correct for this version. It's not until later in the in-universe chronology that we get versions of these that have fully sealed up and pressurized interior that are in turn space compatible. I have seen or heard of some complaints of the fact that the doors don't seal up completely to the hull here. There's a little bit of cheat here with just a little bit of extra space that's taken up. That does not bother me personally, but I did want to acknowledge that some fans that are looking for absolute accuracy here don't like that, and I can completely understand that. I think the issue comes down to a difference in the angle of these plates, which are the best matched to the angle of the lower part of the tail section of the fuselage here, not matching up. So this angle doesn't match this angle, and they had to pick one to be correct. And in this case, the door is lost. So these are not able to perfectly line up there, and they're not able to inset like they would in universe. Continuing up the rear, of course, this is able to move around, but I did find in messing around with this before the review that you don't want to be too rough with this because it's only attached with 4 studs to the inside, and, well, it's not coming off now, but yeah, just don't be too rough with that. It can potentially pop out, and it's easy to put it back in. The engine outlets here look pretty good to me, and then we get to the missile launcher tubes. This is something that I personally don't like so much as we move towards the front. All this is pretty good. That feels good, but then the forward section, not at all. So these are stickers, clear backed again, and this sticker here, the one that's on the top of the piece, or the side that's closest to you, extends all the way down to here. So there is the lower edge of it. There's just a tiny bit of dust under there. As hard as I tried not to let any sneak in, but that's one to watch out for, to be sure. You could probably make this look better if you put this sticker as far up as it'll go and this sticker as far down as it will go, so that you have at least less of that visible gap. But it's a little bit difficult to line those up. But I just don't like the whole shaping of all of this together. The physical shaping of the parts, it's much too chunky, much too thick, because ultimately there's a greater cross-sectional area right here than there is just behind it. There's also a sticker right there, but this should only be tapering down. And then continuing up the center, this is a large clear-backed sticker. This is all nice and smooth in here with how it's built. The transition to the top, I think, is pretty nice. Got a couple more small stickers used here. And then rotating this around 180 degrees, so we're looking at it from the upper back now. These are the missile loaders, and they're geared up. There's no way to activate them from a distance or anything, but they're so smooth, and they rotate nice and just easily, and yeah, it's just a nice little extra thing. You can kind of consider an action feature. It's not properly connected up in any way here, but you know, it's just a nice little gimmick, and it should be visible like that. The wings I'm pretty happy with. The construction is not particularly advanced or anything for the wings themselves. How they're attached works out pretty nicely because, again, they're very wide and rather heavy, but there is enough structure in the center to hold it all together. This is another clear-backed sticker here, but most of what you see here for color blocking is done with just physical pieces. Underneath each wing root is a really nice blocking plate there that fits in just perfectly. That is one of the pieces that I mentioned earlier is a little bit difficult to get lined up just right, but once you find the spot, it just goes in with the hinges behind there, and is another, I'm going to say it again, very satisfying part of the build. And there's what it looks like from the front. It's just dark red here. Each of the wing tips has another bubble-shaped beam cannon, and this uses the same print on top as it does underneath, which is not the same as the one used for the door gun, because this has an emitter here. There's an emitter on the top, an emitter on the bottom, rather than those being built up here. They're just printed in. I think that's fine. The shaping here is a little bit more accurate because this is fully hemispherical, and the gap is just fitted with wing space, and the gaps around the edges are satisfactorily small as well. So I think the design work, the physical design work there is pretty good. There's just a little bit of gap that's left here right at the edge there, which is not smoothed in completely, but that's nitpicking, I think. Finally, on the underside of each wing is a rack of missiles, and there you can see how the bubble turret is done exactly the same. The rest of the missiles, there are 2 inside of each door. You can see their tips right here, and then looking across the troop bay, there they are. While I'm here, that hole, it's just a 2x2 open space, is where you connect to the stand. That white bit right there just fits right through that hole to secure the whole thing, make sure it doesn't move around. And then you have a couple of tiles, just round tiles, that more of the structure of the underside of the fuselage just sits upon. And this is very, very low. There's no other connection towards the front. This is just a little pad. You really don't need much up front because the whole craft is very, like I mentioned, very tail heavy. And then, of course, this has the UCS plaque on it. Unfortunately, this once again has some obvious mistakes on it. chief among them being the notation of with missiles belts. So yeah, good grammaring, Lego, but also it only mentions that you have 2 beam turrets, but there are clearly 4. One comes out each door, and then there's one on each wing. Here are the 2 included minifigures. On the left is a First Battle of Geonosis Mace Windu with a beautiful looking saber that was produced really, really well. Hilt and blade both pretty flawless, I would say. Have just little bits of battle damage on his robes there. I just generally think he was produced well. And on the right is an unnamed Phase 1 clone commander. Now, I've seen a lot of people complaining that LEGO is trying to pass off a generic clone commander as a clone pilot who should look very different, including having a physically different piece for the helmet. But I don't agree with that. I think that this is clearly supposed to be just Commander Pons from Attack of the Clones, who would be appropriate to include around a Mace Windu in an Attack of the Clones setting. That said, LEGO itself on their website does claim that this is a Clone Wars set, which to me is just another obvious mistake of theirs. I've also seen criticisms of the use of the same piece for the Phase 2 torso, or the same basic underlying design for the print, rather, for the torso that has been used by LEGO as a Phase 2 version before, and it should have been a little bit different for Phase 1. But I also disagree with that. I think that it's close enough. The difference between Phase 2 and Phase 1 torso armor is so slight that the fact that LEGO minifigures are not properly proportioned to real people is a much more significant issue, and I don't personally have a problem with that print. Would have been nice to get some print onto the hips, though. That feels like a little bit of a miss. It's nice to get something other than Angry Clone underneath. Nice to get something other than light nougat color for the skin. And overall, I'm happy with this, although it might have been nicer to include a pilot. But then again, this is not a minifig scaled set whatsoever, so I personally would have been okay with no minifigs, to be honest. These are the leftover pieces, and there's really not much special here. I mean, you got that one orange color for the Technic pin with the axle receptor, and a nicely done extra drum lacquered hilt, but otherwise these are pretty generic pieces. Here's one of the sticker sheets. This is just the one that had the UCS Plaque. No big deal, right? And we're pretty used to this by now. But here's the main sticker sheet. Yeah, that was a lot of stickers. And again, all clear backed here, so dust equals rip. One last little thing here. I am a lucky victim of the great Imperial logo debacle of 2021. That is the Imperial logo, not the Republic logo. And the same thing goes for this on the instruction manual. Fortunately, at least the sticker on the actual craft is correct. I paid $350 US for this. It's standard retail price, and it comes with over 3,200 pieces. Many of those pieces, an unusually large percentage of those pieces being larger than average sized parts. So I think even if you look at the price to part ratio and adjust for the sizes of the parts, you will see a pretty decent value here. I personally feel like I got my money's worth for the amount of stuff that's here. Even taking it outside of the realm of just Lego and just kind of thinking of what would I expect to pay for a gunship of this size, with this level of detail, with this level of engineering, with some construction involved and everything, long term, to keep on display for myself. I would be happy with this. It's expensive, to be sure, without question. Could something of this size be made much cheaper? Yes. But all together with the build experience and everything, I feel like the value is pretty respectable here. Again, I'm not all up in arms about the figures. I'm okay with people having completely different opinions about that. I just personally see that this is not a minifig scaled thing, and thus any complaints about the minifigures, especially given how few of them are here, how little they contributed to the price here, kind of don't make that much sense. I personally would have preferred a smaller, play scaled, actually 100% perfectly minifig scaled and minifig compatible gunship here. But there is something to be said about this size. Now, again, Finding a place and way to display this yourself is going to be its own thing, but the size is very impressive. Now, it has a couple of quality issues. Again, these being chief among them, these canopies are not right. It is really not acceptable. The clearback stickers, I kind of get the use of clearback stickers, but I would prefer that they not be clearbacked, or that when LEGO does use clearback stickers, they don't have large areas of completely unused clear space on them. That gives you lots of extra opportunities to get just awful, evil, fundamentally horrible dust underneath there that just kind of ruins the whole thing. Either that or start including at least a couple extra sticker sheets in with the sets. All told, I am happy with this. And I'm not someone who grew up with the Clone Wars TV show, which I'd say most modern fandom for prequel stuff is sourced from people who grew up with the Clone Wars show in particular. It almost feels weird to me to even consider that someone could have grown up, that anyone could have grown up with the Clone Wars series, because it was just a handful of years ago, dude. What? But I get it. So I personally don't have a love. I cannot have a love for the source material for this, like many other fans out there can, especially younger fans. But even at that, I still feel like it is a nice design. It is interesting in universe, and I think that LEGO has done an excellent job of capturing its key shapes, its key components here. I'm generally not even that big of a fan of big builds on the whole. I kind of tire of them, and there's a lot of work that's involved that I would rather not go through unless it's something that I personally want, like that Ultimate Collector Series Super Star Destroyer. Super happy with that, still have it. But here, this did not feel like a chore to me to put it together, because there was enough goodness with the build process, and in the end, it looks nice. So there you go. Those are my thoughts about this. Hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that the time that went into building this and doing the review and everything was worth it for you. Hope that your time in watching the review was worth it for you as well. Thank you for watching. If you want to see more from me, stay tuned on this channel, and for most of the builds, you can follow me over there on Twitch. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.